Hello students, welcome to KENE'S Educare, a group of KENE solutions. This is part 2 of lesson Matter in Our Surroundings. So like in part 1, I made you all aware of what exactly are the topics that we will be studying in the whole lesson, matter in our surroundings. So now I hope that every one of you are aware what exactly we are going to study in the lesson. And now when you study each and every concept in detail, you will feel like that because you knew something before, you will not feel that much away from the topic. Now you know the topic. It's like the same thing, like when you are in contact with someone and when you're meeting someone for the first time, the bond that you share is very different. So same way now when I'm starting the part two, when I'm starting this part 2, you have already met this lesson before. In part 1, you know some or the other part with respect to the lesson, whole lesson matter in our surrounding. So now in part 2, you will learn more about it. You will be very much clear with it. You will like come to know, you will have that clarity in your mind. Now you just know, like suppose let's imagine you have your friend whom you have met for the first time. Now when you meet your friend for the first time, you just come to know the name of your friend, right? The school name of your friend, and about like the normal stuffs, the basic stuffs. But when you meet for the second time, you develop more knowledge about that person, right? You come to know the likes, dislikes. Slowly and steadily it happens, and you get like your bond gets strong when you do that, right? So that is the motto where I like make you aware of the lesson in the first part, so that second part may you have a kind of you can say attachment with the lesson. You are aware what exactly you're going to study, right? So before I start with this part 2, I want each one of you to please go through. Now if you remember, I've made you all make your own notes where I was like teaching you and dictating you some of the parts, right? So before I start with this part 2 of lesson matter in our surrounding, I want each one of you to please revise whatever we have discussed so far. I hope everyone is revising it, whatever you have noted down in the last class. So now we can start with the exact lesson that we have, right? I hope you all have revised it and you are ready for the lesson. So now we have already studied in the last class what is matter. So if you have to define matter, matter is anything which occupies space and has mass. What is matter? Anything which occupies space and has mass is considered to be a matter. Okay. And when it comes to classification of matter, there were Indian philosophers. They classified this matter in the form of five basic elements. And those five basic elements are air, earth, fire, sky, and water, and these five basic elements are called Pancha Tattva. Okay, you might have heard it like somewhere from your grandma or like your grandpa, because they are the one who keeps on telling us different stories and all this thing, right? So like when matter came into picture, the classification of matter started. Was like Indian philosopher, they were trying to classify matter, and they came up that there are five basic elements in which like in different form in which the matter is present. And that five basic elements are air, earth, fire, sky, and water, and we call these five elements as Pancha Tattva. Pancha means five, right? So, on the basis of physical state, matter is classified as solid, liquid, and gases. But, like as we discussed in the last class, we have plasma and Bose-Einstein. You can say that part as well, right? That is also considered to be a state of matter. So but basically the most three important states of matter which have been considered includes solid, liquid, and gases. And when it comes to chemical composition, matter can be classified as pure substance, or we can further classify them as mixtures. Now always remember, now uh, pure. Now when it comes to pure substance, we, because we don't have much knowledge, we think that it is pure, it is free from impurities, right? But scientifically when you go through it, it is not free from impurities. It means that that substance is made up of only one element. Okay, pure substance doesn't mean that it is free from impurities. I'm repeating again, it means that pure substances are made up of only one element. So pure substance may be an element or it can be compound. Okay, and when it comes to mixtures, because we said that we can on the basis of chemical composition, we can classify matter as pure substance and mixture, right? So pure substance, it can be an element or it can be a compound, and mixtures can either be an homogeneous mixture or it can be heterogeneous mixture. So please don't get confused with the things. Now, how will you define matter? Matter is anything that occupies space and has mass. And when it comes to classifying matter, it has been classified into three different states, that is solid state, liquid state, and gas state. And there are five, like they have this five basic elements by which matter has been formed, and that includes air, water, sky, fire, and earth, and we call this as Pancha Tattva. Okay, and when it comes to chemical composition, that chemical composition of the element is classified as pure substance. Now the pure substance can either be an element or compound, or we can classify it as mixture. Now always remember that mixtures can be an homogeneous mixture or it can be an heterogeneous mixture. Getting my point, everyone? So I just want you all to please take a note of whatever is been given on the slide, and even I want you to please go through it once. I hope everyone is writing this classification of matter. How can we classify it further, right? After this, we are going to discuss about the physical nature of matter. So now we know that matter is made up of particles, right? And for a long time, two schools of thought prevailed regarding the nature of matter, where one school believed matter to be continuous like a block of wood, whereas the other thought that matter was made up of particles like sand. Okay, so there were two schools who were working on it, and one of the school was thinking that matter is like continuous like a block of wood, and on the other hand, the second school thought that matter was made up of particles like sand. So here we are going to perform an activity to decide the nature of matter, whether matter is continuous or it is particulate. Okay. So see, let's see the activity whether the matter is continuous or particulate. See, take 100 ml of beaker, fill half the beaker with water and mark the level of water. Okay. Now dissolve some salt or sugar with the help of glass rod, and you have to see whether observe any change in the water level. What do you think? What has happened to the salt? Now I don't think so we need to perform this, because till now I hope like in your entire life you might have done this mixing of water and salt, right? And you will see that the particles of salt, it gets dissolved in water. And now the question comes, the salt is getting dissolved in water, right? But where exactly the salt is, how exactly the salt is getting dissolved? You know, like if you remember when we were discussing about solids, liquids and gases, I have shown you a diagram showing how the particles are arranged in solid where they are compactly packed. In liquids they are like bit away from each other, and in gases they are very much far away from each other, right? So when it comes to salt, because inside the water there are few spaces, there are some spaces which are present between the particles of water, right? So this salt is going to occupy that space. Okay. So once, I hope you have got the reason where exactly the salt goes. It occupies the space which is present inside the water. Okay. So does the level of the water change? And in order to answer this question, we need to use the idea that matter is made up of particles. What it is made up of? Particles. So what was there in the spoon? Salt or sugar has now spread throughout the water. So that has been shown in figure 1.1. And see, in the beaker one, what they have labeled? Particles of water magnified millions of times. Now they are not visible to us, right? So this picture that you can see is like a magnified image of the water, particles of water, right? And after we add salt to it, see how the salt will go and settle down at the bottom, and once you stir that completely, can you see how the salt is getting mixed with the particles of water? So now the particles of water and the particles of salt, they are all connected because there were some spaces which were present between the particles of water, right? So this is how exactly it happens, because when we dissolve salt in water, the particles of salt, they get into the spaces which are present between the particle. Okay, so I just want you all to please write the conclusion and whatever observation you have in your book. I hope everyone is going through this slide at whatever point you feel is important on screen. I want you all to please take a note of that in your book. You can even draw figure 1.1, but you have to label it properly. I hope you all are writing, explaining this in your own words, and you need to draw the figure to like to give a basis for your explanation that you're giving. Okay. So after this, the next thing that we have, we again are going to study that through an activity, right? So the next question that we have is, how small are these particles of matter, right? See, and we are going to study that through activity 1.2, right? See, what we need to do is take 2-3 crystals of potassium permanganate and dissolve them in 100 ml of water. Now potassium permanganate will be available only in the lab, so you can't get that at home, right? So what we need to do, we need to take 2-3 crystals of potassium permanganate and we need to dissolve that in 100 ml of water. After that, we need to take out 10 ml of this solution and put it in 90 ml of clear water. Now what are we doing? We are diluting it. Okay. First, what we did, we took 2-3 crystals of potassium permanganate. We will dissolve that in 100 ml of water. Then we will take out 10 ml of this solution and put it in 90 ml of clear water. And now take out 10 ml of this solution and put it in another 90 ml of clear water. So this is how we are like going to dilute the solution 5 to 8 times. Getting it? Because we need to see exactly how the dilution is taking place. Okay. After that, you have to check, after you have diluted it to 5 to 8 times, you need to check, is the water still colored? So this experiment is going to show us that just few crystals of potassium permanganate can color a large volume of water, that is about 1000 liter of water. So we conclude that there must be millions of tiny particles in just one crystal of potassium permanganate. How many tiny particles will be present? There will be like millions of tiny particles which will be present in one crystal of potassium permanganate, which we are going to keep on dividing into smaller and smaller particles again. So we can do the same activity using like 2 ml of Dettol instead of potassium permanganate, but there we won't be able to see the color difference. Okay, color difference nahi pata chalega if we are going to use Dettol. Instead, like we can have that with the smell thing, because Dettol is going to smell, right, when you dilute it more and more, more and more. So the smell will remain. Whereas with potassium permanganate, you can have a look on the color. With Dettol, if you're using the Dettol, you can have a you can say sense of smelling. Okay, so I just want you all to read this once on your own, and like you can just draw the figure and explain the activity in your own words and keep. I hope everyone is doing it in your book. So you need to explain the activity in your own words. Like if you're not doing it with potassium permanganate, I want you to explain it on your own words with respect to Dettol. Okay? Okay, so I hope like you all are done with the Detol's you're done with the example of Detol. Now the next thing that we have is like characteristics of particles of matter. Now, if you remember in part 1 I have drawn something like this. I'll show it to you again how exactly it was. So suppose this is a box for solid, this is for liquid, and this is for gas. Okay, so in solid the particles are going to be tightly packed. Okay, how they are going to be? They are going to be tightly packed. They are compact, in short, and there is no intermolecular space present between them, right? So this is how the particles exist in solid. You can see the same diagram has been given over here. Now when it comes to solid, the particles are bit far away from each other, like this way. Like they will be close, but there will be like spaces present in between. Okay, like this. And when it comes to gas, in gas the particles are going to be like this. They will be very much far away, and they don't have any intermolecular, like the intermolecular space in gas is more as compared to solid and liquid. Okay, so this is how the particles like particles in the matter exist, and this is how the spaces are present between them. So I want you all to draw this thing in your book and keep, and even the properties that we have discussed, you can even write that in short in under the characteristics of particles, because we need to discuss one more activity ahead, so we'll do that as well. Okay, I hope you all are doing it. Okay, so after this, now we will be discussing on this activity 1.2.1. Now what you have to do, see, take some water in a beaker and note its level. What will you do? You will take a water in a beaker and you will like check the level of the water. You have to note down the level of the water in it. After that, dissolve some salt or sugar in it with the help of a glass rod, and you will see that the salt dissolves in water, but the level of water does not change. Now, what is the reason behind this? Because we just saw how the particles are arranged in solid, liquid, and gases, right? So, in solid, there is no intermolecular space present in it, but in liquid, if you can see, there are some intermolecular spaces which have been present over there. So this salt particles, they are going to go and occupy those places. Now this place is left, so solid is going to go and occupy these places like this. Getting my point, everyone? And that is why the level of the water will not change, because this salt, it was settled down at the bottom. So what will happen in this scenario? Whatever space has been present over here between the particles, the salt will go and take the place over there, and that is why the level of water is always going to remain the same. So this is because the particles of salt get into the space between the particles of water. Okay, so I want you all to draw this figure and write this activity in short in your book, and after that we will discuss on like how particles of matter, they are continuously moving as well. Okay. So sorry. I hope you all are drawing this. Okay. So I hope everyone has drawn this figure, and you have even written the activity, what is the observation, and why exactly the level of water is not increasing, right? You need to write the observation and draw the figure, and even you can draw the solid, liquid, and gas part over here to make yourself understand how exactly it works. Okay. Once you're done with this, now we have the next thing to discuss, that particles of matter are continuously moving. It's not like that particles they are like they only be at one place. They keep on moving continuously. So you can draw this diagram in your book and keep properly. Okay. After this, now we have an activity to discuss this topic, that particles of matter are continuously moving. So how can we explain that through an activity? See, put an unlit incense stick in a corner of your class, and how close do you have to go near it so that you get its smell? Wherever you're sitting, you will get the smell, right, that an incense stick has been burned. So now light the incense stick, and what happens? Do you get the smell sitting at a distance? Yes, right, you get that smell. So write this topic, particles of matter are continuously moving, and while you write this topic, explain the example of incense stick in your own words. Okay, so like you have to explain about the incense stick in detail. Because like when you have to explain that particles of matter are continuously moving, the best example that you can give over here is of the incense stick, or either of perfume as well. Okay, so I just want each one of you to please explain this concept in your own words. I hope everyone is explaining it in your own book, in your own words. That is very important. So after this, now activity 1.4, I won't start it now. I'll be like starting this in the next part. Okay. So I hope like whatever we discussed today, like we started studying about what is matter. We discussed on the classification of matter. After that, we even discussed on the physical nature of matter. And after discussing the physical nature, we discussed on like how small are these particles of matter, right? So we have already studied these things, and then we even studied on the characteristics of particles of matter. So because before I end up, I want you all to please go through whatever you have written in the part. After this, like as I said, that we will be starting with activity 1.4 in the next class. We have one more activity 1.5, which again we are going to discuss in the next class. Then we will discuss on particles of matter attract each other through activity 1.6. We will discuss that in detail. Then we have activity 1.7 to discuss in detail. We have activity 1.8, and then after that we have states of matter to discuss, like where we will be discussing that matter exists in three different states, that is solid, liquid and gas. So here we will be discussing on the properties of solid through an activity, then properties of liquid through an activity, and lastly properties of gas through an activity again. So this is how, like, we will be discussing everything about solid, liquid and gases. And after that we have the next thing to discuss is, can matter change its states? This is also very important because we know that water exists in three states, right? So the question is, can matter change its states? And after discussing that in detail, we will be discussing on, like, effect of change of temperature, and then we have effect of change of pressure to discuss in detail. Okay, and we will be discussing everything through activity. Now that is very important, that you are understanding the concept and you know what kind of activities you can, like, perform, through which you can actually conclude your observation. Okay, then we will be discussing on evaporation in detail, like what exactly evaporation is. And after evaporation we will even discuss on the factors affecting evaporation, because if you are knowing evaporation in detail, you know the advantages of it. You should be even knowing about the factors which are affecting the rate of evaporation. So we will discuss that through an activity again, and then after that we will discuss on, like, how does evaporation cause cooling. Okay, so this is more about evaporation, and then in more to know, we will be discussing about, like, two more different states of matter that we have, that is plasma and Bose-Einstein condensate. So altogether we have five different states of matter which exist, that is solid, liquid, gas, plasma, and lastly we have is Bose-Einstein condensate. These are the five different states of matter that we have. And after that we will have a summary discussion on whole lesson, matter in our surrounding, and after doing the summary part we will be discussing on the exercise questions as well. Okay, but before that, see, here we have few of the measurable quantities and the units which have been given that we should remember, and we will be, like, discussing the exercise questions after that. So I want each one of you to please go through the exercise question one by one. So this is how we will be like ending up with this lesson, matter in our surrounding, by like doing this group activity. But I hope like every one of you have gone through the questions which were being explained over there, right? Because like we will be discussing them at the end, and you are the one who is going to let me know how exactly to solve that question. So we'll do that in detail once I complete teaching you each and every part of the lesson. Okay, and I hope like whatever we have discussed today in this part, you're very much clear with it. Now whatever part has been left, we are going to continue that in the next class. Thank you everyone.